In this episode, Ruud Hopstaken and I sat down in my living room to really give him time and space to share the journey he's been on for the last decade since I've known him. We started out in a professional relationship. I was his executive coach, and then over time we became friends and even colleagues working on some projects together. He has an incredible story where he went from being a very high-level executive in the Netherlands, working in the C-suite and as an advisor for companies, to a very different journey, culminating in a trip he's taking this fall that is quite remarkable. So I really just want you to sit back, enjoy the conversation, and listen to how Ruud has navigated all of the challenges that life has thrown at him, and then spun the dial and put even more challenges on himself by constantly taking risks and leaping, hoping that a net will appear. So join me.
What you give to me is so incredible. It's in me, I'm my own creditor.
Okay, I'm here today with Ruud Hopstaken, a former client, now dear friend, and now also colleague. And I'm really excited to interview you today for the podcast.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
So welcome to my living room.
It's beautiful. I love it here. I
Thank
feel
you.
at peace.
Oh, that makes me so happy. Like I said, I envisioned this place a long time ago and us sitting here having this conversation. So it's nice to finally make it happen.
Yeah, we already had the discussion, I think, years ago that we should sit here, and now
Here we are.
here we are. So it's good.
So part of my goal in having people share their stories is this idea of this crossroads that we reach where we wonder, what direction do we head in? And I just personally feel like you have a very interesting and compelling life story that has a very successful before and then a turning point and then what happened from there. So I'd love for you to share some pieces of your story to start with.
Yeah.
Just who you are and who you've become and
Okay.
a little bit more about you.
No, thank you very much, because you mentioned crossroads, and for me, I've been on many crossroads, but I think the one in the beginning of 2012, that was a big one. That was a big one for me. It's already 12 years ago. And when I look back, it becomes even bigger. And I feel, and I also recognize that I lost a lot of red traffic lights before I came to that crossroad. I had a very successful job. I was the vice chair in a very huge university medical center in the Netherlands. I was working 24/7. Besides that, I was still married at that time, but it was not fulfilling for me. And mostly that was my problem, because I didn't share it. I just thought, well, if I don't talk about it, then it will continue or whatever. But apparently it didn't. So what happened in that year, that we got into a discussion and I stepped out of my marriage. So I rented a place nearby and I was just trying to feel home again. And then I was with another friend. I was running the half marathon in Sweden, in Stockholm. Although it was beautiful, but she said, you're not in your normal shape. You should look at it. And I did it. And that's also the benefit of working in a hospital. You know everybody. So for me, the hospital was like home. I spent so many hours there. So all the doctors with the white shirts, I was okay. And so for me, they were kind of friends. I did a checkup, and I'll never forget that moment. She was looking at me very seriously, and I thought, uh-oh, it's no good news. We called in my colleague, he's the chair, and we said, well, no good news. And at first I didn't realize it, because I thought, well, okay, somewhere perhaps surgery or something, but it will be okay. And my colleague said, no, it's not okay. So within 2 or 3 days, I was at home, sitting on my couch. And then I realized everything became silent, because no job. I stepped out of my marriage, and my life expectancy was not that high, because stomach cancer is not so nice. And I was looking at my phone, no email, nobody was calling me. So I thought, what's happening here? And I was used to live on the highway, always busy, 24/7. I was always on. And now I was off. And that was a huge experience. But it was only, when I look back now, it was only the beginning. I realized that I was talking about stomach cancer as something not belonging to me. So I had a discussion with the surgeon, who was also a friend of mine, and with the doctor. And we were talking about me, but I didn't felt it was talking about me. And they were looking at my stomach. So I thought, well, that's a nice discussion. And the moment I realized that it was me was when I got my first chemotherapy. I was brought to a room, and then a nurse came in. And she was all dressed with, how do you call it, protective clothing. She had 2 bottles of chemotherapy with huge red crosses on it, and I thought, okay. And then she put a needle in me. And that moment I realized, it's about me. Upon that moment, I think, listen how I say it, I think I felt my body, but I didn't listen to my body at all until that moment.
You were running marathons and doing things with your body physically.
It's true. I worked with my body. I exhausted my body. I ran many marathons. And then I thought, well, I want to do more again and again. But the lesson is that I didn't listen to it. I just said or made my body do what I wanted it to do. And now it became different. I had to listen to my body because my body said, well, this is okay and this is not okay. There are many pivotal moments. And there was also a very pivotal moment the evening before I got my surgery. And on Monday night, my kids came. So in a way, I said goodbye. You never know. It was a warm moment. Also, it was a very strange moment, what happened. The doctors came by. I wasn't afraid of them, and they were not afraid of me. So we had a kind of conversation like this. Only I was the topic. First, there came the surgeon, and he said, well, we got 3 options. I said, okay. 3 options. He said, we got option number 1. We open you, we look inside and say, it isn't good. Then we close it, and then within 1 hour, you're back in recovery, and then it's finished. Second one is that it's only the tumor in your stomach. And then we remove it, and then it will be 4 hours. But also it can be a tumor, it can be a huge tumor, and it can have grown also a little bit higher. Yeah, sure, a little bit higher. And then we have to, it will be a huge surgery, and it will take 8 hours. So the next morning they drove me to the operating theater. I climbed up the operating table, and then it went all black. I wake up in recovery, and the first thing I asked to the nurse is, what time is it? Because I realized I got surgery at 8 o'clock. So I thought, okay, when it is 10 o'clock, bad news. When it is 12 o'clock, it's good news. And when it is 4 o'clock, it's also a bit of bad news. And she said, well, I'm just going to lunch, so it's around 12. And I felt so happy. It's strange. How can you be happy when they just removed your stomach? And at that moment I realized I felt so whole, but I lost my stomach.
Wow.
It was an amazing experience. It was an amazing experience. And another thing happened 2 weeks later, because I was a very quick recovery. I had been running until the day of the operation with my chemotherapy. I thought, well, my body has to be in a good shape. after 2 weeks, the results came of the stomach they removed. And that was also a very important moment, because then they could say, well, it can be on the good side or it can be on the negative side. So the surgeon came on his bike to the hospital. He was going to run, and he said, I just got the news, it's okay. And I started to cry. And he said, you're happy now. And I couldn't say anything. So he went away. But it was not that I was happy because that I was going to live, but it was in a way from sadness, because cancer has been with me for more than half a year. And instead of being in fight with my cancer, because I think you have two kinds of people. People say, you have to fight it, you have to kill it, it has to be taken out, it's not a part of you. And you have another group of people, and I'm one of them, say, well, it's in me. I am not cancer, but I have a disease. I have cancer. And I want to treat it well. So it became part of me. And now they took that part away from me. So there were also tears of, I lost something. I lost something. And the other thing I realized, because now you can think that's an amazing story. And how beautiful.
Right.
But in a way, the difficult part had to start. Because now I realize I survived cancer. I even survived all my top jobs. I survived everything. But how do I live? So I had to make, in a way, instead of surviving, instead of running marathons, jobs 24/7, surviving chemotherapy, what it is. How do you live? And that was for me quite a new chapter. And that was another story. So I went on a journey. At the end of the road, it's look in the mirror and say, who am I? And what am I here to do? Who am I? And that's a rather interesting and difficult question. So I did a lot of things. I went to Hawaii to go to Jane Ocean and to swim with the dolphins. And on my way, I think we have met also at that time in San Francisco.
Yeah.
On my way, I had a stopover in San Francisco, and then in a smaller plane, we flew to Hawaii. And then halfway the flight, the captain said, we got a problem. One of the engines is gone bust, and we have to go down. And we're not going to fly to Hawaii, but to another airport nearby. So people started to cry.
Oh my God.
People started to scream. People became silent. And there was only one person with a big smile. That was me. Because I thought, listen, I survived cancer.
Oh my God.
I'm not going to die in a plane crash. It's not going to happen. And it didn't happen. And I did it in a way many times. So I walked with the Maasai people in Africa. I also went on a journey in India to visit a beautiful old lady. And I remember I asked other people, in a way, what to do. I asked other people, who am I? And I believe on that journey, and I'm still on that journey, I'm the only one who can answer that question. Who am I? I'm now in another crossroad, that I have taken everything off. No functions anymore, so I'm not a chair anymore, I'm not a vice chair, I'm not a member, I'm not a CEO, CFO. It's just Ruud. And it's enough. And sometimes there are feelings or thoughts that make me anxious, but I've been there. I've been in that moment that I felt, is that thought going to help me or is it not going to help me? And it helps me to change, because I also want the world to change, especially now, with everything that's happening around us. But the only thing I can manage is, what I really can manage is myself. So I have to change for myself. And you can do the work I do, because I now work with business leaders and entrepreneurs in the same way, but without the cancer, without the divorce, without all the things I experienced. And I just asked them the question, who are you? Are you happy? And it always starts with a question. And that question is between them and their ambition. And I help them to solve that. It sounds strange, but cancer for me has been the greatest gift. And it was a present. It was difficult to unwrap. But when I unwrapped it, I thought and I realized, wow, this is a gift. And it helped me to live my life, to lead my life. And that's what you hopefully see when you look at me.
So you chose not to return to work. You chose to take a different path
Yeah.
and not go back to your job. Is that correct after the surgery?
Yeah, when you say it like that, it sounds like that it was really my choice. And I think at the end, it was my choice. But in the beginning, I wanted to go back because it's so difficult to do something different. Because I was at that time 52. I worked my whole life. I felt responsible. So I was used to running around. I was used to be busy. I was used to be important. And without it, in the beginning, I felt a little bit naked. What I described as sitting on the couch, looking at my phone, and I thought, why is this ringing? No emails. Why isn't my car coming in front of the house, taking me to the office? So I was not used to it.
So you didn't have your identity
No, true.
of your role.
Yeah, because that's another, I can give you a beautiful example of that, because at one moment I really said goodbye to my job. And then I had to clean up my room in the hospital, my office. And I'll never forget that moment. I hold, I think, 2 or 3 little boxes of my business card. And I was standing there and I thought, and I let them fall in a big container. And I thought, is it only my business card? Or is it also a little bit of me? And I think the truth is, not even a little bit, but also quite a bit of me fell in that container. So at the end, it was my decision to leave. But in the beginning, I wanted to go back to normal, because I was used to normal and I was not used to live. I was used to how to survive. And I was a master to survive. Because everything I wanted to do, at what cost soever, I achieved. Whether it was running a marathon or whatever. And it took me a long time to change that habit. My friends and I, we said, well, we haven't run the marathon from Barcelona in Spain. I said, no, we didn't. Shall we? Let's do it. And I remember it. So we were running. And I think after 30 kilometers, he was running a little bit ahead of me. I thought, what the hell am I doing? What the hell? And that was not the man with the hammer. And I met that man with the hammer many times. This was different. This was something in me saying, it's enough. So I stepped out of the race. I walked to the beach in my shirt with a big number. I go to a coffee shop. I went to cappuccino. I was sitting on the beach. And people were looking at me and said, are you not running the marathon? I said, I did, but I stepped out. But I'm happy. So it's just an example how difficult it is to change. I survived cancer. I was in the middle of something I didn't know, a new job, something else. But I still wanted to grab something, to be back to be back again. And then I got surgery again in my knee because when training afterwards, I injured my knee. So I had to go back in the hospital again for another time. So they took out, I think it's almost a kind of egg out of my leg, out of the bone. And I had to learn a little bit to walk again. And then I realized, okay, how many messages do I need to have to listen? So again, it's a crossroad, but it's an extended crossroad. And what it brought me, I started to listen to myself, what I call my inner voice. And I also started to listen to my body. So apparently my body said, it's enough. It's enough. Do something else or listen to us. And then things started to happen. I changed my diet because that's the beauty of it. Having no stomach, you can feel the real difference between vegetables and a Big Mac. When I eat a Big Mac, I'm going to lay on the couch and I fell asleep. And when I eat vegetables, I can have this chat with you. But that also took me a long time because sometimes I like the Big Mac. Who likes the Big Mac? My body doesn't like the Big Mac.
Right.
So why do I eat it? Why do I eat it? The same discussion I had with alcohol, chocolate. I love chocolate. When I buy a bar, within 2 seconds it's gone. But I feel it. I feel it I would say I feel it in my stomach. I don't feel it I feel it in my whole body. That is not okay. It took me years to change that. Again and again. But it takes some time. So that helped me a lot. So listening to my body is still an intensive journey. This is what I feel.
You made many changes in your life, I know. When you let go of your home, you don't own a car anymore. So people would say, oh, I have to go back to work. I have to earn money. I have to, because they're afraid of losing their security, losing their, I mean, we've talked about losing your identity, but how were you able to make that transition into finding work that was meaningful for you? How do you change without the cancer? How do you change without the divorce? But people also fear being uncomfortable or changing their lives. I'm sure you encounter this in your coaching practice. How do you guide people with that?
At the end of the day, to start with their fear and what they're anxious about, and let them experience what it means to them, how they think about it and what they feel. And what I realize, because you and I, everybody, is an example of that, is that we have something, where we bring something from our past, our recent past, when we were young, when we were kids. Not I think, but I know, we are the only mammal who is so dependent of their parents compared with any other mammal in nature. So that gives some imprint onto you. And these imprints, at that time, you only had one behavior. You could cry or you could be silent, and that's the only thing. And in the basis, I think everybody still acts in the same way, perhaps a bit more sophisticated, but still that way. I am the only child, and my parents never had a fight. They never had a fight. They did never raise their voice. So I was never used to a conflict. What I do when there is a conflict, I try to bring everything down. And I'm really good at it. I'm really good at it. I can bring people together. But it's not always good. Sometimes you need a conflict to get everything on the table so that people can see, oh, that's what we are talking about now. So sometimes conflict is useful. But from my upbringing, I only had one way to deal with conflicts. And that was, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to raise my voice. So that was my way to do it. Now I learn to change that behavior to a more useful approach. You have a free choice how to react. I don't only work with in a way that we talk to each other, but also with the body, because this was my experience. My body has also a lot to tell to me. And I chose to, until I was 50, I choose not to listen to my body. And now I do. And it's not only you who is very busy and in tremendous changes, it's also the world around us. And I think it's important to talk about it and to let their body speak and let eventually their inner voice speak. And that's for me a starting point. And that's also, in a nutshell, my experience. What I have experienced with cancer, the completed changed relationship with my children.
It sounds like you felt in survival, you felt trapped in some way.
Yeah.
You thought leaving your marriage was the solution. You feel free now and you realize that you were that before, but you were just in it.
When I work with people, there are 4 stages. I think the first part is awareness. Awareness, how you think. Awareness, how you feel. And it sounds so easy now. But for me, it was so difficult to feel. Because I never had, in a way, listened to my body. Other than ordering my body to do something. To run a marathon or to continue with running a marathon or whatever. But I never listened. So that's one. You have to be aware. And then the second part is to observe. To become a kind of bystander of yourself and say, oh, what's happening now? You need that to be an observer. And then you have to experience as the third step. So that's why I work with breath work. Or I let people write down what they think. And I say, okay, is this it? Is this what you think?
Mm.
So then they experience it. And then you have eventually the next step, visualize what you truly want to happen. Our dear friend Joel Kimmel said, and what you want to have happened. And that's what it is. Because then you can make a change. But you have to be aware. You have to observe it and you have to experience it. And it took me a long time to learn to listen to my body. When I was on my journey, I also went to China. I met a very old Chinese doctor and I told my story, like now. And I said I had stomach cancer. And he said, ah. And then he asked me, what kind of person are you? So I started to describe, well, I was a very busy, was an important guy. And then he asked me, what do feelings mean? What do they mean for you? And then I realized that because of my upbringing and also how I grew up, so I swallowed my emotions. And then he said with a big smile, I'm not surprised that you got stomach cancer. And I thought, oh, that's another way to look at it. And I think it's a better way to look at it. So it's always interesting when I'm in a conversation with somebody and we talk about illness, that I ask somebody, how was your life? Did you ever get ill? And what kind of illness did you get? And it says something about the person. It's a story. The illness is a story in itself. And then came associations of my youth. When I was in my teens, between 10 and 20, I had a skin disease. And even earlier, I had a kind of disease for my lungs. I couldn't breathe. So when I got back, I dig a little bit deeper in my personal history. And you mentioned, I just said, I'm an only child. But in fact, that's not true. I'm not an only child. I'm the third one. I'm the third one. Because I had a brother and a sister, but they died around birth. They both died. And then I started to realize that I also did a family constellation 5 or 10 years ago. And everything starts with a question. Everything starts with a question. So you can imagine a constellation, and you're sitting in a circle with, say, around 30 to 40 people. And there was a lady who, she was the one who organized everything. And she said, okay, Ruud, you're next. So I was sitting just like this. She said, what is your question? And I said, why do I always feel alone? She said, okay, that's a good start. She said, yeah. She said, well, walk around in that circle and pick out your parents. I thought, how do you mean, walk around, pick out my parents? But the strange thing happened. When you walk around, you see, that's my dad and that's my mother. Second thing, he said, you position them in the middle of the circle. And it's a tricky one, because then you start to feel, how do you want to position them? Like we, looking each other in the eye, or back to back. And you don't have to think about it. It happens. So what I did, they were not facing each other. They were more or less back to back. And then she did something terrific. She said, Ruud, do you allow me that I also put the two dead children in the circle? I said, okay. So she picked 2 volunteers and she asked the volunteers to lay down between me, I was also standing in a circle, and my parents. And then an amazing thing happened. The woman that I picked to be my mother, she started to cry. She couldn't stop. She started to cry, to cry, to cry, to cry. And then for the first time in my life, my mother at that time was still alive, I realized the pain and the grief of my mother. And I thought, what's happening here? And then it resonated so much for me that I felt alone, because at that moment I could imagine that specifically the years after the war, building up everything, no time for emotions because you have to work. You have to create a new existence and whatever. So you have a miscarriage, so what? Next time. That's not the way how a human being works. So then I realized there was so much grief in my mother, which she couldn't ever share it. And in a way it was between me and her. And when you look back at those illnesses with the lungs, and you go back to the Chinese medicine, the first thing they say, when children lung, they say there is some grief in the family because you're not able to breathe. And then I realized, oh my God. For me, there is, of course, evidence-based medicine. Therefore, I really choose to accept the chemotherapy. And I choose to go to surgery. But it was also my choice to postpone the surgery, to go with the Ayurveda woman and say, well, I want to have a session with you that I can say goodbye to my stomach. So I believe in a combination. I believe as well that my illnesses, they tell something about me. It's not an accident. It has a reason. It comes somewhere. And now we are only talking about my past, what you can call my real past between my birth and now. But, with the Native Americans, you have the 7 generations. I really don't know what has happened in the third, second, all those generations before me. Still, I don't know. But I feel it has influence on me. Although I still have a choice how to deal with it, but it has an impact.
Yeah, I understand you had more empathy for your mother and where she was coming from. I'm curious if that altered the relationship with your mother and or how it might have altered the relationship with your children as the generations going forward.
To start with my mother, no, it didn't change the relationship. There was another moment with my mother that we were sitting on her balcony, and I asked her, do we need to share something before? And my father died 2-3 years ago at that time. And she looked at me with a very beautiful smile and said, no. I have said everything I wanted to say, and the things I don't want to say, I take with me. And for my children, yeah, it did change the relationship with my children, but I think it's also a combination of the cancer, I think. Because although I lost my stomach, I got back my ability to connect and to share feelings. Yeah. I realized that if I wanted to hear something from my daughter or my son, I had to say something first. And my daughter, yeah, you know her, she's a mirror for me. And I said to her, yeah, you can always call me, I said to her. And she said, no, I couldn't call you. Because when I called you, I got your PA or I never reached you. And when I reached you, I got you on the phone, but you were not there.
Wow.
I hear you talking, but you were somewhere else. And then I realized she was right. So that whole period changed the relationship with my daughter. Yeah, especially with her. Yeah. Yeah. But it took me a long time to change. And I know that at some stage I was able to travel again. And then she gave me her teddy bear and said, take it with you as a companion. And I flew to Los Angeles and to other places to go to seminars. And then every time I picked out my suitcase in my room, I put the teddy bear next to me. And I thought, I'm not alone. I'm here. And at some time, I think it was a year after my surgery, I also went to a psychiatrist because I realized in the beginning of this is too big for me. I need some emotional support. So I went to visit a psychiatrist and I said to him, this is what probably is going to happen with me. And I need somebody to talk to. And you are also a psychiatrist specialized for people with cancer, so you know what's going to happen to me. And he guided me, he helped me throughout the whole journey. And most of the time he was laughing. He said, what you are doing is just textbook. You are doing it good. When I prepared myself for surgery, I didn't know how it went. And I was in the middle of a divorce and I had to arrange a lot of things. I had to make up my will, my last will. I had to arrange my funeral. I already organized the restaurant. I did everything.
Wow.
So I made a note for my best friend. I said, whatever happens, I gave him the letter. I said, you know what to do. And there were also the songs that had to be played at my funeral. And I don't know how, but my daughter read that letter before I got to surgery. She came to me, shaken, anxious. She said, are you really going to die? And I said, no, but these are the preparations. Oh. And we talked about it. and she came a little bit at ease, but not that much. So for her, they were not preparations, but they were, in a way, preparations to say goodbye. But on that list of that music, it was a song that we always sung together. It was an amazing song. And we always went together to the concert of that famous singer, and we were then singing it out loud. That moment became enormous for us. We were crying. At that number, we were crying. We knew he always played it at the last time. So it was an amazing moment for us. We were crying and we were broke. And then I realized I have to give that teddy bear back. And there was a moment in Antwerp, I will never forget it, because in Antwerp, that singer, he had one of his famous last concerts. So I said, let's go there. And before we went to the concert, I opened my suitcase and I said, it's time to give it back to you. And that helped us both, that she became my daughter again. So it's amazing. So we learned both of it. Both,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So she's my daughter again.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Thank you for asking.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking.
Beautiful story.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Surrendering to the Signs. I hope you found it inspiring. Please like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Also, feel free to hop on over to surrenderingtothesigns.com, where you can download our free e-guide with examples and your own workbook to help you identify your signs. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode and wish you well.
The only thing I can do with people is to help them to walk their road, to live their life and not somebody else's life.